Welcome. We're on the red couch with Jaszy McAllister, a woman of many talents and diverse interests, including being the driving force behind Modern Hippie Mag. This online resource is dedicated to hip, healthy, conscious living and environmental sustainability. Jasy's desire to give voice and document her own personal eco journey and discovery was the basis of creating Modern Hippie Mag. Outside of being the editor-in-chief, Jaszy is a spokesperson, host, model, and actress. She's a member of the Westcoast Black Theatre Troupe and is a talented performer with remarkable skill and energy. She's currently the lead in A Raisin in the Sun, a powerful drama by Lorraine Hansberry about a poor Black family's struggle with themes of hope, racism, and feminism. Jaszy, I am thrilled to have you on the red couch.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Tell me about your role, your current role, in Raisin in the Sun, about Ruth.
Ooh, it's a very meaty role. It's the one part I always ever wanted to do because when I saw the movie, the original of the Broadway version with Sidney Poitier and Ruby Dee, I probably have it memorized. And her character was just so strong, but yet loving and supportive. And it's just the levels. And so when I had an opportunity to audition for it, I thought, I gotta get this because she is everything that a woman should be, strives to be, and endeavors to be with her family.
Do you see yourself in Ruth?
Yes, I'd like to think so. Of course, I try and find a little bit of me in every character that I do, but Ruth especially because as I get older, and she, of course, was, her character is 35 with a 10-year-old son, and although I don't have children and I'm a little bit older than 35, I see where family is so important to her, as it is important to me, but also just to try and keep it going. You know, they were in a situation where they're living in a very small, cramped apartment in the 50s, and they're poor, and just dealing with that alone. But then also the struggles of being a woman, a Black woman. So yes, I do see that because some of those issues are still prevalent today.
Yeah, I liked what we talked about earlier about the way that you saw Ruth as someone who didn't have to kind of, I'm this important, strong woman. Mm-hmm. She just is a silent, strong woman.
Love that about her. I mean, obviously, there's also the character of Lena, who's the mother, and she, of course, she's, strong. And the actress that we have playing her, Alice Gatling, out of Texas, is this strong personality. And so, of course, you see that a lot, but not so much with Ruth. She doesn't need to make it known that she is this strong, volcanic, kind of woman or personality. And I like that, especially because that's how I am most of the time.
Yeah, I can see that. Totally. Now, you have done other performances, you've done other roles with Westcoast Black Theatre Troupe. Is that right?
Yes. My very first production with Westcoast was Jar the Floor, which that show was just so wonderful in that the storyline, 5 generations of women and their journey with one another, and it just mirrored my family.
Wow.
Almost to a T, which was amazing. And for anyone, who's not really familiar with the show or didn't see it locally, I had to shave my head for the character. And that experience, loved it.
Wow.
Loved it. You want to talk about empowering? Shave your head. So that was my very first role. And then I went on to do, there was an original piece written by Nate Jacobs, who's the artistic director of the theater troupe, Marvin Gaye. And I played, I think, most of his wives, or at least 2 of his wives, or whatever. And altogether, I had 5 characters that I played in that production. And then almost directly following that, we did another original piece on Cab Calloway. And very late in the process, they added what would be the women in his life to help tell the story because it was supposed to be a one-man show.
Oh, I didn't know
And
that.
so I had 8 roles in that production, playing all of the women in his life.
Wow. That's pretty fun.
It was very interesting, especially for my dresser, who had to make sure that I was in and out to go back on in my different characters.
Wow. That's really fun. Now, do you have a favorite role that you've played?
A favorite role? Oh, the reporter in the Marvin Gaye show was very fun. I'm so very thankful to Nate that he gave me artistic license to make her what I wanted, because she was kind of written in later. And so I made her very quirky and funny and sassy, and she had attitude, and I mean, it was fun, whereas everyone else, I did Maxine, who was the etiquette person for Motown, and then here comes this loud, obnoxious reporter, so she was the most fun, but I'd have to say favorite, though, would be Ruth so far.
Huh. Well, it's interesting. I couldn't really imagine that your first acting career role ended up becoming on tour. Mm-hmm. And that was pretty amazing and pretty lucky break. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Oh, it certainly was. When I just moved to Sarasota, I had only been here for a few months, and I was making friends, and I was at an event, and I just happened to say, out of the blue, acting is something I've always wanted to try. And a friend that I just met who was standing off, she goes, oh, the ears. And she goes, really? And I said, it's something I've always wanted to do since I was a little girl. I'd watch television. I'd say, I can do that. I know I can do that. And she said, okay, I'm going to give your name to a director friend of mine for a production that I'm in.
Wow. And
I really did not think anything more of it. I let it go until I got a voicemail message from who I thought was Katie Couric.
That would have been fun.
That would have been really interesting, except it wasn't Katie Couric, it was Katie Curran.
Close.
Who is a local director, and she called me up, and we had this conversation. I went to audition, and I had never auditioned for anything. I didn't know the process, and she had me read, and she also said during this occasion, now, that was really good, but can you do that with a South African accent?
Just on the spot.
On the spot. Okay, let's try that. And I did. She loved it. I was cast, and I found out later that I was actually taking Saisha Mercado's position in the show, because she was going on to pursue her music career, and she went on to do American Idol. And we went on tour, and I got to perform that piece in front of members of Congress because it was a granted piece. And so I can say that my very first acting gig ever was a paid gig, and also helped to launch me into continuing to do other roles.
That's so cool. Now, I really think you're like a Renaissance woman. I mean, when we talked earlier, I couldn't know, I didn't even know where to start.
Okay.
But you were in the Army.
Yes, I did have a short stint in the Army.
And how did you get there?
Well, it wasn't on the life plan. It was not something I endeavored to do. It wasn't like I sat in high school and said, I'm going to join the Army. It was supposed to be a means to an end. I went through high school with the understanding I was going to become an attorney. And I went to school and to college, and I studied criminal justice and psychology with the intent to then, after I got rid of the whole attorney thing, I wanted to do criminal psychology. And once I graduated and I was looking for ways to really try and make that happen, the FBI seemed like the most reasonable choice, especially since Clarice from Silence of the Lambs was one of my favorite people.
Jodie Foster.
Jodie Foster. I loved her character in that. And I saw a billboard for the FBI. They were looking for African-American women. I did more research. They were looking for Black women who already had a little bit of military experience and a degree. I had a degree. I happen to be a woman. I think I'm African-American most of the time. And so I thought, I'll get the military experience. They can't say no. They'll love me. They'll take me. And so I went in to do a short 2-year tour that turned into almost 4.
Wow. And you traveled with the Army. You were in Korea?
I did. My very first duty station was Korea. I was there for a year.
Stay tuned for part 2 of this interview on the Red Couch.